Okay, what you're seeing now on the screen is the 1973 playtest rules, also known as the Dahlon manuscript, and Beyond This Point Be Dragons. So there was a system of melees and combat in this rule set that was based on chainmail. It gave some significant advantages to characters when it comes to initiative. It also gave an interesting mix of both the alternative combat system from Zero Edition D&D from 74 that we see in 74, and called alternative combat system, as well as the chainmail man-to-man system. So what you would do under this system, it also had some interesting rules for horsemen, precision missile fire with bows for elves and with slings for hobbits. And then it started talking a little bit about magic in the combat encounter, but then just drifted into talking about saving throws instead. Talks about hit points and recovery and jousting. And that's it for the melee section. Very short and sweet. It depended on people understanding chainmail. The tables for jousting are replicated in the back, as well as some other tables. So what you'll see here, if you scroll down in this manuscript, would be a set of tables that are very familiar to us from the alternative combat system, except these are given in D100 values simply because they didn't have dodecahedrons and 10-siders. They didn't have 10-siders and 20-siders. So what they did is they drew playing cards to represent the tens column and the ones column. And this was a rollover system, which I have mistakenly in Dragons Beyond turned into a equal to or greater than system. I will correct that in version 1.12 so that the statistics match up. But anyway, take it from me, these numbers are fairly close to the alternative combat system and they're very regular. So this is an algorithm. This is a mechanical system that I felt comfortable replicating point by point, although I did convert it back to a D20 system since we're more familiar with that. If you scroll further down, though, what you get is two other tables that they call the instant kill tables, which are really just a replication of the chainmail man-to-man tables with some minor exceptions. So first exception is here you see two different rows for missile weapons. The first row is to establish whether or not, using 2d6, whether or not you hit. So you don't use the alternative combat system, you use 2d6. And these numbers are way, way too easy. If you were to replicate these numbers in a combat system, almost everything would be resolved as missile fire, and I did not want that. So the only special missile fire stuff you'll see in Dragons Beyond is the precision missile fire for elves and hobbits, what we call halflings. The second row was, number for number, a replication of chainmail. How this worked was you would roll your to hit value first, and then if you hit, you rolled to see, using these chainmail tables, whether you fully penetrated the armor. Let's say it that way. You got a critical hit. You got an instant kill. And applied, either you killed a normal figure or you applied 6 points of damage. I like the way this system rolls. And when we were playtesting this using the original rules before I wrote Dragons Beyond, what we did was we rolled D20 and we rolled 2d6 all at the same time. You had one, and it was easy because we were using Foundry, so you could tell what was the first dice rolled and the second six-sider that was rolled. So you would look at the D20 and determine, hey, did I hit this guy at all? Did I even touch him? Did I make contact with him? And then the 2d6 was to determine, did I fully penetrate the armor? Was it a critical blow? Therefore, I get the full damage. Otherwise, I take how many pips showed up on dice number 1. Unless it was 6, then I looked at dice 2. Unless it was 6, and if it was less than, the idea was I didn't give 6 hit points away if you didn't achieve an instant kill, unless both of them turned up 6s, in which case I said, hey, I'm going to give you a break. You get 6 points of damage, even though technically you didn't fully penetrate the armor, you still hit this guy badly enough, you deserve the full 6 points of damage. So to recap, roll d20, that's to hit. Roll 2d6, that's for critical. If it's not a critical, take one of those dice and allocate it as the damage. Easy peasy. It plays very well on the table. I'm going to actually do some combat walkthroughs in a later video so you can see how quickly it plays at the table. It takes care of all that nonsense about critical hits and craziness like that. And I find it to be a really useful system. Okay, moving on. On the left side, chainmail, and on the right side is Dragons Beyond. In chainmail, what you'll notice on the left side is that there is a move, counter move, turn sequence. And each of the numbered portions of that sequence are called segments later in the rule set. I've kept as much as possible that terminology in Dragons Beyond. In Dragons Beyond, what you'll see is it's called a round sequence because turns are something different that apply to dungeoneering. And anyway, the combat round is the terminology that I use in Dragons Beyond. And then each of these numbered subsections is actually a segment. In chainmail, you'll see that there is a initiative die, but it's not used the way it is in later systems, in later non-zero edition systems. What the dice roll determines is who moves their pieces first, and then who does the counter move. And sometimes there's a tactical advantage to allowing your opponent to move first, especially when you take into consideration pass-through fire. Okay, so let's talk about split moves. Split moves generally apply to mounted archers, whether they're in a hoda or on a chariot or on horseback. The idea is for a split move, you move half your distance, take your missile shots, and then move the other half of your distance, and then your move segment is over. Pass-through fire. So pass-through fire is a little different concept. Side A is going to move. Side B, these are the missileers. I guess I'll point a gun at them. This side, the moving side, moves to the midpoint of their move. If they're within the arc of fire, line of sight, etc., if the missileers have a clear shot and they have meet some other conditions, usually being stationary is one of them, they take their first shot of the round at that midpoint and allocate the casualties during the movement segment. And then this side gets to continue the rest of their movement. You'll see an example of that in Holmes, and some people contend that you also see it in Mulvey. Moving back to chainmail, let's do a quick walkthrough here. So we've got, you roll the dice for initiative, you defer your move or take your move first, the other side moves, pass-through fire is allocated, all that stuff. Then you see artillery fire is taken. In chainmail, in the fantasy supplement, it also specifies that magic takes place. No casualties are allocated during the artillery fire segment, nor during the missile fire segment until everybody's made their shots, and then all of the casualties are allocated for segments 4 and 5 simultaneously. After that is done, melees are resolved, and then these steps repeat. There are also morale checks that can take place in chainmail. There are 3 conditions for a morale check. There's first, if you're charged by an opponent or there's a fantastic creature that approaches you like a griffin or dragon, that can prompt a morale check. The second condition is when you take a certain amount of casualties known as excess casualties, which is either at 66.5% or 66, basically when you're at 2/3 or at half of your strength, combat strength, because you've taken casualties, people have run away, or you've been disabled due to spell or something else, then you have to make a morale check to decide whether or not you're going to stay on the battlefield. If you fail that morale check, you're gone. Whereas if you fail the charge morale check, you run away for, I think, 1 move or 1.5 moves. And then finally in chainmail, there's a third system called the post-melee morale system. It's calculation heavy, and it is not replicated in Dragons Beyond. So shifting your attention over here to the right side of the screen, you'll see in chainmail, I've I've kept a segment sequence. I've added in a first kind of an admin segment here. In chainmail, during the initial setup of the game, you decide whether or not you're going to use the weather optional rule. And then every even turn, I think it is, you potentially can change the weather. There's no space for that in the move counter move system. I think it needs an admin slot. Similar thing with handling the effects of magic, wind, weather, smoke, fire, all that stuff. I added an admin segment for the GM's reminder and convenience. Also, we added a declaration phase. In chainmail, you have to declare whether or not you're unseating a horseman, attempting to unseat a horseman when it comes time for that in the melee segment. I just put all the declarations here up front. Same thing for fantastic combat and heroic challenges. All that stuff you're declaring up front, just so there's clarity when we move into the initiative phase. The move and counter move sequences with split fire and pass through fire I've kept. Missile fire and artillery fire I've kind of flip-flopped. I think I did this because A, you're allocating all the casualties at the same time anyway for those two segments, and B, I think it had to do with the way the page layout was monkeying with me. It seemed to work better this way. It's been a month since I did this, month or two since I did this stuff, so pretty sure that's how that happened. Heroic challenges. Let's go back here. So heroic challenges, one thing I did is during segment 4, if you're within earshot, you can issue a heroic challenge. Earshot is defined as 90 feet. I just said during segment 4, we're going to move those to the midpoint. They're going to stay in base-to-base combat, base-to-base contact during the heroic challenge. Also, in segment 5, I just made it very clear that charge and countercharge movement gets reconciled during the second movement segment. That way, we're not trying to do half of it one time and then redoing another half at some other point, and dealing with countercharge, right? We just get rid of that and put it all at the same time. Okay, moving on. Melee is resolved by groups of combatants in a series of blows and counter blows and additional blows. We'll see much of that later when we continue to walk through these rules. I'm out of time today. I would like to point out that, again, we've got 3 different types of morale checks here in combat within Dragons Beyond. What we do not have is a post-melee morale check. That's all I've got for today. Hope you enjoyed this video, got something productive out of it, and we'll talk to you again sometime soon.